Good morning, and welcome to the May 24th, 2020 service of the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. My name is Sue Bickford, and I'm your worship associate for today. The names of these 8 women: First Lieutenant Sharon Ann Lane, Second Lieutenant Pamela Dorothy Donovan, Lieutenant Colonel Annie Ruth Graham, Captain Mary Therese Klinker, Second Lieutenant Carol Ann Elizabeth Drasva, Second Lieutenant Elizabeth Ann Jones, Captain Eleanor Grace Alexander, First Lieutenant Hedwig Diane Orlowski, have 2 things in common. Their names all appear on the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and they're all nurses. This Memorial Day made me start to think about who we remember and for what. This timeless act of remembering those fallen in battle was enshrined in a national holiday in the United States in 1971. Years of organized celebrations around the country dating back to the Civil War coalesced around a date in May when many Southern women's auxiliary groups initiated ceremonies to honor the Confederate soldiers who died. The language of war that has permeated our conversation around COVID-19 made me start to think about those who serve in this slow-moving war. Who will be fallen and who will be honored when we reach the point that we are able to look back and remember? And my mind turned to nurses. Nurses have been present and integral in all war. Historically underpaid and undersupplied for war, they have also been under-acknowledged. From the first organized nursing responses in the time of Florence Nightingale in the Crimean War and Clara Barton in the U.S. Civil War, to our reality of fighting against a virus that threatens us globally, nurses have been essential, but not always honored. Diaries and letters from nurses from World War I to Vietnam and the Middle East detail the difficulty in getting support they require to do their jobs in the field, and the support they need to reintegrate back into a previous life after having been in a situation that changed them forever. We are now aware of how much PTSD is brought home from war by soldiers, but we may not have considered the PTSD brought back by the nurses. The collection of stories from nurses who served in Vietnam document women who struggled mightily with PTSD when they came back to the U.S., but didn't have a name for the condition. They often blamed themselves for their lack of ability to sustain relationships or for a struggle with alcoholism. There are similar stories among combat nurses in Afghanistan and Iraq conflicts. And now we have reports of PTSD in the medical staff that are working with COVID patients. The LA Times reported that the stress for healthcare workers is comparable to war, and that as many as 20 to 25% of healthcare workers will be left with PTSD. Unlike a war with a human adversary, healthcare workers face an unseen adversary who not only endangers them, but whom they can inadvertently carry home to their families. No matter how stalwart and stoic someone may be about the dangers of their job, when the enemy can be hitching a ride home on you to endanger the ones you care most about, it can stress anyone. Stressed, guilty with feelings of inadequacy at the overwhelming job, unsupported by equipment to keep them safe, healthy, and working, is not how most of us imagine nurses. Historically, they are angels of the battlefield or angels of mercy, working tirelessly for the healing and respite of others. While this may ring true, these gauzy images do not give us the complete, fleshed-out picture of warriors subject to all the hazards of war that we need to embrace to truly honor nurses. Memorial Day was designed to honor the fallen in battle. I believe that we need to keep a very broad idea of who that entails. More important right now is to keep our healthcare workers from becoming the fallen in battle. Our covenant reminds us that service is our prayer. That prayer is needed by those who are on the front lines now. That prayer may be political action to demand the equipment that is necessary to keep healthcare workers safe, or personal action to check in on someone who has this vital role, or financial action to make sure that services that support healthcare workers have the monetary resources to keep supporting those whose jobs are beyond essential. We can all find a way and have an obligation to help undergird those who keep the fabric of our nation knit together right now. Someday their graves will be decorated in honor of what they've done for us all. Let's just make sure it's just not too soon a someday. If you have a chalice with you this morning, please light it as I light mine. I light the chalice this morning with the words of Robert French Levins. Holy and beautiful, the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened, and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend: faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them place.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Petach Sharei Shamayim, Sharei Shamayim, לתפילתנו. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, תהא השעה הזאת. שעת רחמים ועת רצון מלבדך. סליחה ומחילה. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, כותבנו בספר חיים טובים. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, כותבנו בספר גאולה, בספר גאולה וישועה. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו בנינו, כי אין בנו מעשים. עשה עמנו, עשה עמנו, צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו.
Good morning, and welcome to the weekly gathering of our beloved community, the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. We gather this morning on Eid, the festival in which Muslims all around the globe are breaking the fast of Ramadan. Eid Mubarak, blessed festival to everyone who is joining us on this special morning. Our service today explores the history and traditions behind why it is we meet, like so many other communities of faith, on Sunday mornings, the Sabbath for many. Each week, over 100 members and friends of this congregation join together at this time, and hundreds more are able to enjoy our services throughout the week. We hope you might consider sharing some of these services with neighbors and friends who may be seeking beautiful music, spiritual practices, prophetic messages, and liberal religious community in this time of so much distancing and isolation. If this is your first time joining our community, we're glad you're here. I'm the Reverend Jeremiah Kalendae, and this service is co-created with our talented worship associate Sue Bickford, inspiring director of music Sonder Choi, wise director of religious exploration Cleo Anderson, and our supremely gifted pianist Ryan Humphrey. Special thanks to our choral section leaders who open us to new horizons of our spirits with their beautiful voices and musical gifts. Unitarian Universalism is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder and mystery of our lives and affirm that we are all connected to one another and that great interdependent web of all of being. Our tradition arises from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient traditions. We are a welcoming community, inclusive of people of diverse religious beliefs and philosophies of life, gender identities, sexual orientations, racial and ethnic identities, abilities and disabilities, ages, immigration statuses, and social locations. We invite you to join us in co-creating this beloved community of the liberal spirit we generously share with each other and our world. Come, let us worship together.
O Sabbath day, and bring peace and healing on thy wing, and to every weary one let a word of blessing come. Thou shalt rest, thou shalt rest. Welcome Sabbath, let depart every care of troubled heart. Now the daily task is done, let a word of comfort come. Thou shalt rest, thou shalt rest. Work and sorrow cast away, Sabbath is for prayer and play. With the setting of the sun, let a cheering message come. Thou shalt rest, thou shalt rest.
Please join with me in speaking together the covenant of this church. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land by every tongue.
Good morning. Today's story is about Shabbat. If you don't know what Shabbat is, it is the Jewish day of rest. So, as Unitarian Universalists, we often attend church on Sundays. But a lot of Jewish folks actually celebrate their day of rest from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. And this story is about different people and their take on Shabbat. Now, once upon a time, there were 3 sisters, Michal, Rivka, and Rebecca. Now, the 3 girls grew up in a relatively religious household. High holy days, their dad ran several events at the Purim Carnival, and the girls all attended shul. And Shabbat happened every Friday. Now, there are a lot of rules to Shabbat. There are a lot of activities that you can't do because it's meant to be a day of rest. So no making things, no playing instruments. There's a very long list. And as little girls, it was often hard to avoid doing things they really enjoyed. But they managed. But as the girls grew older, their mother got sick and she passed away. And then their father got sick and he passed away. And by this time, Michal was in college, Rebecca and Rivka were married and out in the world, and Shabbat didn't seem very important to Rebecca and Rivka. Their lives were busy. They had kids and jobs, and sometimes they just wanted to get their nails done. But for Michal, it was her way of remembering nights spent with her mother and her father and her sisters, and so she kept Shabbat going. Every week without fail, 18 minutes before sundown, she lit the candles and said the prayer. She said the Kaddish, which is the prayer over the wine. She blessed the challah. She washed her hands. She had her meal. She celebrated the day the way she was taught. Now Rivka and Rebecca lived not too far from Michal, in a mid-sized city, and one day the power went out. And Rivka and Rebecca were in the dark. They couldn't find any flashlights. The candles were somewhere, but there was no light to find the candles, and oh dear. When suddenly someone knocked on the door. Rivka opened her door, and a woman said, "Oh, it's so dark outside. All of the streetlights are out. May I come in?" And she said, "I'm sorry, but I have no lights here." The woman's like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna miss Shabbat dinner, and would it be okay if I just had a bit of challah and said the prayers with you?" And Rivka said, "There is no challah. There is no meal. I was gonna order Chinese, but I'm sorry, I can't help you." So the woman walked on, and lo and behold, she knocked on someone else's door. It was Rebecca's house, and she asked the same thing. "It is almost Shabbat. It is dark outside. I can't find my way home. I was wondering if I could come in your house and have some challah and say the prayers and celebrate Shabbat with you until the lights come on." And Rebecca said, "Sorry, but I only have enough light for me to finish my work, and I ordered pizza." The woman said, "Well, thank you very much," and slowly crept her way through the dark. She made a wrong left turn and then a wrong right turn, and she was very lost and concerned, and there were like 3 minutes until the candles needed to be lit, and she saw a window that had the flicker of light, and then suddenly the window lit up. And so, one last time, she knocked. And Michal came to the door. And the woman said, "I see that there are lights in your window, and it's so very dark outside, and Shabbat has started, and may I please come in and have a bit of challah and celebrate with you?" And Michal said, "Of course, I don't have a lot, and I'm in college, but I have challah, I have salad that I picked up, and there's some cookies from the cafeteria earlier, but you're more than welcome. Oh, and there's no wine. There's grape juice. That might have been in my fridge for a little while." The woman laughed and said, "That's more than good enough." And so Michal and the stranger celebrated Shabbat that night. And as the streetlights came on, the woman said thank you, shook Michal's hand, and left. And Michal never thought anything of it. And time went by. Life moved on. She didn't think too much of it, but one day, the project that she wanted to do in college, and they told her there was no funding for, had magically been funded. And she was very, very confused. Who was going to fund her project on feminism and Judaism? Like, there's research being done, but she was a sophomore in college, and it turned out that the woman she'd let in her house to celebrate Shabbat with her remembered her. Remembered that she kept the true meaning of what it means to welcome visitors, to celebrate the day of rest, to welcome community. And so she donated the money that Michal needed. Michal made a friend. Michal got the funding that she needed without knowing she was doing so, all because she remembered and held on to the traditions that have been passed down for thousands of years. And that's our story of Michal's Shabbat.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Let us enter into the spirit of mindfulness, meditation, and prayer together this morning. This time will be followed by silence. As we begin, let us hold in our hearts the many fallen service members, all of those harmed by violent conflicts, and especially the nurses in our day and throughout history who have been on the front lines of caring and compassion in honor of Memorial Day. This Ramazan has been a month of sweetness, open-heartedness, and love. One of the unexpected gifts of this month has been a series of centering meditations that were inspired by my engagements with Sufi readings and poetry. I'd like to share one today in honor of Eid that arose from the powerful words of Sheikh Musafir, may he rest in divine mercy, peace, and blessings, on the essence of the path of love. I will read his words twice and then invite us into a meditation on his words. Leave everything and cleave to love. Turn your heart from all else. Feel love in your whole being. Take love as your guide to the land of being so that you may reach the true beloved. Enter the paradise of God's love. Behold the beauty of the friend. Gather the roses of the garden of union. In the way of love, the lover sacrifices himself but finds the dear one. All saints who have drunk of the wine of love have sacrificed themselves thus in the way of love. Leave everything and cleave to love. Turn your heart from all else. Feel love in your whole being. Take love as your guide to the land of being so that you may reach the true beloved. Enter the paradise of God's essence. Behold the beauty of the friend and gather the roses of the garden of union. In the way of love, the lover sacrifices himself, but finds the dear one. All the saints who have sacrificed themselves thus in the way of love. As I meditate on these words, the verses, leave everything and cleave to love, turn your heart from all else, feel love in your whole being, resonated through my being and kept calling me to return to them. I would like to invite you into a deeper meditation on these words. Feel love in your whole being and turn your heart from all else. Begin by sitting comfortably, closing your eyes, and connecting with the serenity of your breath. Just allow the natural flow of your breathing to invoke calm through your whole being and bring you to an awareness of your heart center. Breathe deeply into your heart center, and on your inhalations, inwardly recite the verse, I feel love within my whole being. And on your exhalation, inwardly recite, I turn my heart from all else. So breathing in, I feel love within my whole being. And breathing out, I turn my heart from all else. Breathing in, I feel my love. I feel love within my whole being. And breathing out, I return my heart from all else. Breathing in, I feel love within my whole being. Breathing out, I turn my heart from all else. Now continue with this centering meditation on your own for the next minute or so. Now slowly allow the words to fall away, but allow the experiencing to remain as we enter deeper into ourselves with this practice in the silence. We will sit like this with the experiencing for the next minute. Slowly return your awareness to our service by wiggling your fingers and toes and slowly opening your eyes, bringing forth the refreshment of this inward retreat. Amen and blessed be. A divine voice, flashes of lightning, creation of the sun, of the earth and the moon spinning in their orbits, the waters being filled with living creatures, vegetation bursting forth from the land, birds filling the skies, and wild animals and livestock roaming the earth. The voice of the great spirit of life continually declaring it to be good. Not once, but over and over again. On the sixth day, human beings are fashioned, and then the Creator Spirit, contemplating all the heavens and the earth completed in their vast array, declares it all to be very good. In the time that follows all of this divine activity and creativity, the One rested from all of this work and blessed the seventh day and made it holy. This is the sacred story of the first Sabbath in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic tradition. Shabbat is a Hebrew word that indicates ceasing and rest. In honor of this final day of divine rest recorded in the book of Genesis, the Torah commands that a time that signifies this day is to be set aside from ordinary time and honored and sanctified. As the sun begins to set on Friday evenings in traditional Jewish homes, preparations are well underway to welcome and celebrate the arrival of the Queen of Days. The day begins in this ancient tradition not at sunrise, as many commonly assume, but with the arrival of the evening. This is because in the Genesis creation story itself, the completion of each day, Hashem, literally the name, the Hebrew signifier for the divine name, concludes, and there was evening, and there was morning, the completed day. So in homes all around the globe, the Shabbat honoring begins at sunset on Friday, continues through Saturday morning and afternoon, and then concludes when 3 stars can be found in the night sky. The honoring of Shabbat is the only ceremonial instruction found in the 10 Commandments of the Hebrew Bible. In Jewish tradition, it is the 3rd commandment. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. What exactly one is to remember is found in the book of Exodus, which recalls the creation story, and then in Deuteronomy, Moses, peace and blessings upon him, observes, "On the holy day, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and you were brought forth from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and therefore you are commanded to observe the Sabbath day. On the holy night, 2 candles are lit to recall the commandments to remember and to observe." There are also extensive lists of what's prohibited during this sacred time. Things such as sewing, plowing, sifting, kneading, baking, threading a needle, writing, erasing, and a multitude of other forms of work. You can't even kindle a fire, so in many Orthodox contexts, this means no electricity or telephones or computer or anything that might distract one from spiritual rest. The day is meant to be a time for restoration of the body and the spirit, and it is a time of joy, family, and community. The Sabbath has been remembered and observed in this way for thousands of years. And if you recall the powerful poem Pandemic by the Reverend Lynn Unger that we shared in our service at the onset of the pandemic, it invited us to step into this period of being safer at home as a Sabbath. She wrote, "What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are all connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart, reach out your words, and reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, as long as we all shall live." This month in our congregation, we've been considering the spiritual theme of thresholds. We began the month by exploring the beginning of the lunar month of Ramadan in Islamic tradition as a yearly threshold period in one religious tradition for drawing near to Spirit. We then explored the life stage threshold of motherhood and how we honor mothering in our lives and within ourselves. The Reverend Kakanza Nuri Robbins then invited us into the liminal time experienced by Noah, may peace and blessings abound for him, as he sent birds out to determine if it was safe to return to land. Today we are exploring the necessity of Sabbath periods, times for ceasing our regular activity to rest and restore ourselves, as they were articulated by diverse religious traditions around the globe. The treasures of the Jewish mystical tradition invite us into a deeper appreciation for marking a specific time for cultivating the sacred in our lives. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the foremost Jewish theologians, philosophers, and civil rights leaders of the 20th century, considers the Sabbath in one of his foremost texts of the same name. He writes, "Shabbat comes with its own holiness. We enter not simply a day, but an atmosphere." My father cites the Zohar, a Jewish mystical text. The Shabbat is the name of God. We are within the Shabbat rather than the Shabbat being within us. For my father, the question is how to perceive that holiness. Strict adherence to the laws regulating Shabbat observance don't suffice. The goal is creating the Shabbat as a foretaste of paradise. The Shabbat is a metaphor for paradise and a testimony to God's presence. In our prayers, we anticipate a messianic era when there will be a Shabbat, and each Shabbat prepares us for that experience. Unless one learns how to relish the taste of Sabbath, one will be unable to enjoy the taste of eternity in the world to come. It was on the seventh day that God gave the world a soul, and the world's survival depends on the holiness of the seventh day. The task for the Jewish people, he writes, becomes how to convert time into eternity, how to fill our time with spirit. 6 days a week we wrestle with the world, wringing profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. The world has our hands, but our soul belongs to someone else. In Jewish tradition, the Sabbath is welcomed as the bride of the soul, as the very real presence of the divine experienced in and through time. These traditions teach that it is the Shekinah, the divine feminine spirit, who is the bride of the holy day. Ancient mystical traditions included going outside and into the fields, wearing white as though it was a wedding, and facing the west as the sun was setting and the presence of God was welcomed in the night. Kabbalah, the mystic quest in Judaism, notes that there is a passage in Hasidic prayer books that is from the Zohar, which is to be recited upon the arrival of the holy night. It expounds the mystery of Sabbath. Sabbath is unification through oneness, which causes the mystery of oneness to dwell upon it. Prayer, which the Sabbath rises up, unifies and perfects the holy and precious throne through the mystery of oneness, so that the divine and holy sovereign may sit upon it. When the Sabbath begins, she is made one and separate from all evil, and all of the forces of severity pass away. She remains unified with the holy light and is adorned with many crowns by the holy sovereign. As the powers of ire and forces of severity are uprooted, there is no evil dominion upon the worlds. Her face is radiant with divine light, and she is adorned below with holy people. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks reflects that the Sabbath is Judaism's stillness at the heart of the turning world. I love the idea of honoring this time and its sanctification as the place of stillness in a turning world. Alongside Rabbi Heschel's teachings that it is where eternity is planted and in time, and a taste of paradise, where a taste of paradise is savored. Just as the creation story in the Torah tells us that it is a time of rest after work and a time of remembering freedom after enslavement, it is also meant as a period for mindfulness and contemplation, freed from the encumbrances of the world. Rabbi Heschel argues that it is the day on which we learn the art of surpassing civilization, and explains, gallantly, ceaselessly, quietly, human beings must fight for inner liberty to remain independent of the enslavement of the material world. Inner liberty depends upon being exempt from the dominion of things as well as from the dominion of people. There are many who have acquired a high degree of political and social liberty, but only very few are not enslaved to things. This is our constant problem: how to live with people and remain free, how to live with things and remain independent. Honoring sacred time is therefore understood to be a way of transcending the limitations of our material lives to encounter what is sacred in life. It is through that encounter that we then again engage with the world and sanctify it because we stepped beyond it for the sacred day. Christianity maintained the Jewish tradition of honoring the Sabbath, but changed the day from Friday night and Saturday to Sunday. Now that meant instead of continuing the tradition of honoring it at the end of the week, originally a reflection of the sequence of the creation story, Christianity would instead celebrate it at the beginning of the week. It is believed that as Christianity became less attached to following the laws of Moses, and as it integrated more of the dominant pagan customs, it gradually changed the day. The Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire, declared in the year 321 that, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all the workshops be closed." It is theorized that the primary pagan customs honoring their sun deity, that many of the ancient pagan gods and goddesses had days named after them, and Jesus, peace and blessings upon him, was associated with the sun and was understood to be the Son of God. Therefore, Christianity would align with the pagan custom and honor the Sabbath on the sun's day. In Islamic tradition, there was another slight shift, and it recognized Friday as the Sabbath day. Many centuries after these changes, our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors continued these traditions, and thus here we are gathered on our Sabbath morning. This religious honoring of a Friday, Saturday, and or a Sunday of sacred time was transformed by the workers' unions to the modern concept of the weekend. In our gatherings each week, we honor these traditions of our Jewish, pagan, Christian, and Islamic forebears. A Sabbath day is about as divinely multi-religious and secular as one can get. As Unitarian Universalists, with many sources, we acknowledge as flowing into and transforming our living tradition, it is important that we too consider the ancient traditions we honor. Do we not also sanctify time with our gatherings and worship services? Is it not here, on this hallowed day, that we explore the great wisdom of the world and find its relevance to our lives? Is it not here, in the lives with whom we share the sanctified time each week, that we taste something of paradise? Is it not now that we make time for love and uplift all that we discover to be of supreme worth in life? To the sanctification of the Sabbath, may we discover eternity present in each moment, in each hour, and in each day. Amen, Amen, Shanti, Shalom, Salam, and blessed be.
We come together for more than ourselves. Today we share 50% of the offering with the UUA's COVID-19 Response Fund. This fund will be used to provide financial assistance to UU congregations, as well as religious professional staff impacted by this crisis. You can now text your donation from your smartphone. Text 844-982-0209 with the amount you'd like to donate and GCC in the body of your text. For example, 20 GCC. The first time you give, you'll be asked to register. The number again is 844-982-0209. If you have not yet provided a pledge of support for our church, you can provide a pledge via text as well. For example, 200 PLG. Please show your support for all our church community in this unprecedented time of physical apartness and financial uncertainty. Thank you for your generous support.
Adonai roi lo exar in od she'ar b'tzini al menuchot yenachalini nafshi Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Lehitraot, Lehitraot, Shalom, Shalom. Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Lehitraot, Lehitraot, shalom. Shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lehitraot, lehitraot, shalom, shalom. Shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lehitraot, lehitraot, shalom, shalom.
Go forth into this Sabbath day with the blessings of peace and goodwill, the companionship of religious community, the wisdom of ancient tradition, and the abiding presence of love. Amen, and blessed be.